Disabilities can have a devastating psychological impact. To be disabled means to have lost or never have had a variety of functions. It can also signify being more isolated from people than one likes. And because others can be cruel and oblivious at times, disabled individuals are frequently made to feel different by others.
What is APD or CAPD? Auditory Processing Disorder or APD. It is often known as Central Auditory Processing Disorder, a condition that adversely affects how sounds that travels unimpeded through the ear is processed or interpreted by the brain. Kids with APD are thought to sense sounds normally because they usually hear sounds that are delivered one at a time in very quiet environments such as a sound-related or treated room. The problem that triggers in this, they usually don't easily recognize slight differences between sounds in words, even if it is loud enough to be heard. Here are ways to diagnose APD. First, auditory figure ground. Next thing is auditory closure. The third is diacotic listening. Next is the temporal processing. Lastly, the binaural interaction. Dyscalculia. This is specific learning disability that affects a person's ability to understand numbers in general learning math facts. It is related to ADHD, known as Attention Deficit Hyper Disorder. ADHD also deals with the learning conditions wherein disproportionate amount of people are often related to dyscalculia. The so-called mathematics learning disorder doctor says almost 60% of people with ADHD are almost likely to dyscalculia. Moreover, a dyscalculia disorder can be treated, although it is indeed challenging to learn math concepts.
Dysgraphia, a specific learning disability that affects a person's handwriting ability and fine motor skills. Problems may include illegible handwriting, inconsistent spacing, poor spatial planning on paper, poor spelling, and difficulty composing writing as well as thinking and writing at the same time. Dyslexia, a specific learning disability that affects reading and related language-based processing skills. The severity can differ in each individual but can affect reading, fluency, decoding, reading comprehension, recall, writing, spelling, and sometimes speech, and can exist along with other related disorders. Dyslexia is sometimes referred to as language-based learning disability. Dyslexia and dysgraphia are both disorders that can occur that affect students' learning. Dyslexia is a problem with reading, while dysgraphia is a problem with writing. Dyslexia involves problems in how the language areas of the brain function. Dyslexia and dysgraphia can overlap because they are both neurological language disorders.
Language Processing Disorder. A language processing disorder, or LPD, is an impairment that negatively affects communication through spoken language. There are two types of LPD. People with expressive language disorder have trouble expressing thoughts clearly, while those with receptive language disorder have difficulty understanding others. Nonverbal learning disabilities. A nonverbal learning disorder, or NVLD, is a learning disability that causes difficulty with motor, visual, spatial, and social skills. Children with NVLD are often well-spoken and can write well, but struggle with subtle social quest and comprehension of abstract concepts. 1.65% of all communication is conveyed nonverbally.
Perception or visual motor deficit. It refers to the ability to make sense of information that is taken into the eyes. Deficits with visual processing affects how visual information is interpreted or processed by the brain. This impacts a child's ability to read and affects their ability to draw or copy, and often leads to a short attention span. Moving forward to the three
Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD. What does it mean? ADHD is a neurological disorder that affects your ability to pay attention, sit still, and regulate your behavior. It affects kids and teens, and it can last until adulthood. In youngsters, ADHD is the most frequent mental condition. It is more common among boys than among girls. It's commonly detected in a child's early years in school, when he or she begins to experience focus issues.
ADHD is incurable or preventable. A child or adult with ADHD can manage their symptoms if they are diagnosed early and have a strong treatment and educational plan. ADHD can be classified into 3 subtypes: predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive impulsive, and combined type. Children who are aloof, cautious, and shy tend to have inhibited conduct, are inattentive, and lack of attention. They are most likely diagnosed with attention deficit disorder or ADD if they are not hyperactive. In the presence of clinical distinctions, ADD and ADHD are therefore classified as separate illnesses.
In terms of decision making, people who has ADHD is impulsive,
And sluggish in ADD.
in terms of attention seeking, show off, egotistical, relishes in being the worst are under the ADHD.
Under in ADD, modest, shy, often socially withdraw.
In assertiveness, bossy, often, and irritating.
In ADD, under assertive, overly polite and docile.
And in terms of recognizing the boundaries, intrusive and occasionally rebellious are under the ADHD.
Under the ADD, honor boundaries, usually polite and obedient.
In popularity, attract new friends but has difficulty bonding.
In under the ADD, bonds but does not easily attract friends.
And last but not the least, in associated diagnosis, the ADHD has oppositional defiance and conduct disorder.
While in ADD is depression.